the weird and the wonderful with strange bones. That's me. And I hope everybody is doing fantastic. Because we got an interesting one. One which I think is quite different from what we have done before. And it is something that has come out of a very interesting topic that I would imagine that everybody in some manner or form has found fascinating. And we refer, of course, to the ninja. A rather cool idea. But what were they? And what is their history? It's a strange sort of a situation that I think is something we've all asked ourselves at one point or another. So welcome. And as we get going, I'm going to remind you that on this channel, our habit is that we don't promote nor deride any of the things that we look at. We merely find it very interesting, and we do what we do purely for the interest thereof. We do everything that we do just for our own education, interest, and fascination. And we're not, hey, Mickey,
Hello.
how are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you?
Good, good, good. You came on fast there.
Ooh.
Were you waiting?
Yeah, I actually was.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
I was
welcome.
watching. I was watching TikTok videos. And I'm like,
Well. Hopefully, we will keep you on and fascinate you further with the topic for tonight. So we're just getting started, reminding everybody that we're not here to promote anything or to say anything's right or wrong. We can have whatever opinion we like, and we are absolutely welcome to comment that. The only rule is, of course, don't be rude, because if you are rude, we give you the boot.
yeah.
Absolutely. But do comment. It's good for the algorithm. And do like. We like likes. Share, subscribe, give gifts, do all of the wonderful things. And poor old Spooky is only second in line to join. You beat him.
Yeah, yes, he is before me.
So welcome. Spooky, are you in good form?
Hi, how's it going?
Yes, going good, thank you. Going very good indeed. So, in order to get into our topic, we are going to have to lay a little bit of background, because there are a number of things that made the ninja what they are, and they wouldn't have existed were it not for the situation in which they arose. So, to begin with, you need to understand the cultural situation in Japan at the time that they started out. And it all came down to the extremely ordered and organized way society worked in Japan. And everybody had their roles, and by and large, the rules were very straightforward. Nobody was allowed to carry weapons unless you were a samurai. Nobody was pretty much anybody unless you were a noble, and if you were a noble, you were a samurai. Now, the samurai could and did carry weapons by law, which meant a samurai could never be unarmed, which is quite interesting. But of course, if you weren't a samurai, this led to problems, because not all samurai were as good as all that, and if you weren't a noble, you were basically nothing. So if you got knocked off, nobody cared. Well, you did, but nobody that
Yeah,
mattered. But of course, the samurai belonged to different clans, and that meant they were often at war. And you had to obey the rules, and honor was everything. If you did not keep up your side of the honor, it could cause huge damage, not only to your own self, but to your entire family. So there were a lot of things you could not do because you were a samurai. So, good or bad, you had a very sort of overly structured situation that, for quite a lot of people, didn't work well. Now, it worked if you were a lord, but it didn't work for everybody else. It also didn't work because there were things that you might need to get done that you couldn't do because of honor. So your samurai were nobility, they were soldiers, they were warriors, they were officials, and everything went in accordance with Bushido, the way of the warrior. Honor, loyalty, duty. And you could not break that. Now, they were the ones with the formal armor. They were expected to at least carry their two swords, the katana and the wakizashi, the long and the short sword. And then if you were to go into battle, you would carry the yumi and the yari, the bow and the spear. Now, the combat style was entirely honorable. Open warfare, direct engagement, very, very ritualistic in a great many ways. And they were good warriors, but there was a lot they were not allowed to do. And we see the issues coming out of this entire structure where a particular person, Ieyasu Tokugawa, ran into difficulties and basically he was going to lose. And there wasn't much he could do about it because if he did, his honor would be destroyed. So he needed a plan. Now, we're going to halt the history just there for a moment, and we're going to go back to India, where a particular monk was trained in a number of skills in combat, including armed and unarmed combat. And his name was Bodhidharma. And he decided to go walkabout. Now, this is a very shortened version of the history, so it's glossed, so work with me. But he basically went off and walked through China, and after going all the way through China, ended up in Japan. Now, the result of his movement through there was, in a great many ways, Kung Fu, because in China as well, carrying weapons only if you're a real person, i.e. nobility. So unarmed combat became very, very useful. So wushu, the art of unarmed combat, developed in China. And when he got to Japan, they had another problem. And it was this. The temples had a particular rule that monks, the Shinto monks, would walk around Japan collecting and begging for money to support the temple. And they would gather it all up, and eventually they would make a big circle and end up back at the temple. The difficulty with that was that the robbers knew this, so they would wait. And when they got back, nearly back to the temple, because they were monks, they were not allowed to use weapons. So they were an easy target. And especially the temple at Shaolin. But you
Oh,
see, the rule was against edged weapons.
I
So
see.
when Bodhidharma told them about unarmed combat, this was allowed. So the
Oh,
Shaolin monks started to learn unarmed combat like that. And in Japan, the Shinto monks did exactly the same thing. So they
oh,
started
shoot.
learning. But of course, as you can imagine, not just the monks got interested, because if you're not allowed to carry weapons, but you still want to defend yourself, the use
Mm.
of just a simple staff and punching and kicking
Yeah, so,
goes a long way to keeping you safe. Because obviously,
yeah,
while you can't fight necessarily against swords and things,
yeah,
against common bandits, it's a big help. However,
mm.
two places in Japan really like the idea. The Aiga families in the Aiga prefecture and the Koga families in the Koga prefecture. And they took it a step further because illegally they started using weapons as well. But
Oh, that's
now,
good.
here's the thing. They were not samurai, which meant they were
Oh,
not bound by the rules of honor. So they could do the things the samurai could not. And Ieyasu Tokugawa hired 300 of these guys to help him out from the Aiga and Koga clans. And they were hugely successful. And as
oh,
a reward, he permanently hired them, partly to reward them and partly so that nobody else would hire them because they were
yeah.
that good. Now, what they could do, which a samurai could not, was be a spy, an assassin, a saboteur, and a mercenary.
I actually wanted to tell you something.
Yes,
Sorry, totally out of context here.
go for it.
I was I was just thinking about it. I forgot to tell you last night. Before I came to my mom, I was going through stuff, from my ex that he
Yes,
left
yes.
behind, and I found a sword. It's like
Ooh.
made out of feels like almost a bamboo kind of thing,
Ah,
but it's like what you see in the anime in the dojos when they do their
okay.
practice fighting.
Is it a straight sword with a string down the back?
There's no string, but it's like straight, like a little bit
Okay,
bowed. It's
so
long,
you
so it's
get
like practice.
two
Like a
kinds
practice
of
sword.
wooden swords in Japanese
Yeah.
culture. The straight one, which is bamboo, it has like a string support down the back,
Oh,
is
I
called a
see.
shinai. The
Yeah.
other
This seems
one
like no.
is a. I'm trying to think of the exact Japanese word. I think they call it a bokatana, so a wooden sword, basically. And they are
Yeah, it's pretty
literally,
much.
yeah, they're for training. I own one as well.
Yeah, it's pretty much a wooden. There's no string or anything. I was just
Well,
looking at it and I was like, hey, look at this
yes, so
thing.
that would be a
Well,
bokatana. Now,
when I get home, I'll
in,
show you. I'll send
yeah, I'd
you.
be very interested because the shinai is specifically used for kendo,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah, I thought
bokatana
that.
is used by a number of styles.
Yeah. No, I think it's the Kendo sword because that's what it looks like, honestly. Because
Well,
he
there
left
we
a
go.
few, yeah, he left a few swords and things. So I was like, look at this thing. Huh?
Oh, well, we love the swords and stuff. That's definitely
Yeah.
a big deal.
I think the
Now,
other stuff is costume jewelry, like cheap, like
well, 90% out there is. There are very
yeah,
few real ones, and of course, they would be horribly expensive.
yeah. There's only one there that looks like it could be authentic, but I
Maybe it
don't
might
know.
be worth looking at, because if it is authentic, there would be a number of things on it that would show.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, well,
so
yeah, I'll show it to you when I get back.
done, because then I will tell you how to tell if it's probably a real one,
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do that.
because there's a number of markings. And we will get into the samurai, because they've
Mm,
got a whole lot of history as well, but they are not the point for tonight. The point for tonight
yeah,
are the Aiga and the Koga. Now, within those regions, you had a number of families. Now, we generally think of the ninja as just the ninja. Well, first of
yeah.
all, ninja per se didn't exist. It's a modern word
Uh,
that has come out in later centuries. They were originally thought of as shinobi, the shadow
okay.
people, because the key point was they weren't seen until such time it was too late, and
Yeah,
they were faceless, which was a tactic, as well as hiding their identity. It also meant that it would appear to an enemy that no matter how many times you killed one, he came back
yeah.
regardless. So it was a terror tactic,
Hmm.
which was very interesting. Now, of course, this meant that you've got a bunch of people who now have a vested interest in being really, really good at what they do.
Yeah,
And they took it to the absolute extreme. So, in brief, their only rule was complete the mission by any means necessary. Doesn't matter how, finish it. And this gave
yeah.
them the reputation of 100% success. If the ninja
Yeah.
was sent against you, you died. And that was very important. Now, to take the matter to the next step, is that Ieyasu Tokugawa, the reason he couldn't fight was because his family had been kidnapped. And if he did anything, they're dead. And
That's
what the
true.
ninja did, or shinobi, was they kidnapped his family from the kidnappers successfully. So now
Or
all of a sudden, Tokugawa is no longer held back. And he immediately raised up a massive force and took his place, and eventually became very important and all the rest of it, and we will get into Ieyasu Tokugawa in a minute. But the whole point was he couldn't have done the spy work necessary to find where they were. And because he was required to go in face to face against his enemy, he couldn't
yeah.
have rescued his family before they were executed. But the
That's so
ninja
sad.
could.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, of course, we know them because of their fancy hooded clothing and their weird weaponry. And there's a reason for that as well. And they were known for stealth, espionage, unconventional fighting, and simply never getting caught. Now, samurai were very high status nobility. Ninja could be anyone. And over history, they ranged from simple peasants right up to actual samurai, who were secretly ninja as well. Ninja only did mission success. No clan, no honor, no nothing. They were given a task, one way or another, it was done. They
Yeah.
were strictly ordered in ranks. The Jonin at the top, the Chunin, who managed all the different missions, and the Genin, who did the missions. Okay, now, anything you couldn't do, the ninja could. And that was the point. So, where do we begin? Well, we know that they started coming around between the 12th and the 14th centuries, where they became used by a lot more different people. They were originating in the Eiga and Koga regions, and the geography is the other important thing, because the Eiga and Koga regions were right up in the mountains, and you really couldn't get an army up there without serious issue. So they were protected. The only way you could get up would be through guerrilla tactics, which samurai are not allowed to do.
Oh, yeah.
So, somewhere between the 10th and 12th century is where you first start seeing them appear. And then from 1467 to 1603 was the Warring States period, where all the samurai were fighting against each other. And then, of course, it meant there were lots of jobs for the ninja. So that was where it really came. But the Eiga and Koga regions, the clans there, started really specializing and became the experts in ninjutsu. Now, one thing that most people think is that ninjutsu is unarmed combat. No, it isn't. It is all the arts, including spying, camouflage, and everything. The unarmed combat of the ninja, or the shinobi warriors, is taijutsu.
Okay.
So yes, there are specific names for the specific things. So we have that to give us a certain thing. Their tactics were very important, but so was how and the way they managed their things. They were experts in reconnaissance, in arson, explosives, survival, and all combat, armed and unarmed, including some very clever things. Now, contrary to what you might believe from the movies, they almost never wore black ninja suits.
Oh, okay.
No, that wasn't what they did. And also, if you wear all black at night, you stand out. And standing out is not what ninjas did. So very often they used other colors that blended better.
Yeah, like, for sure.
So did you know that a deep crimson will blend better in the dark than black?
Oh, okay.
Yes, it will. It might be very obvious during the day, but at night it's not.
Oh,
Now,
interesting.
green and camouflage would be used in forested areas, white in snowy areas. They used what worked to hide.
Yeah.
Now, we do know that eventually, after the warring period, Japan became unified, and the Edo period began from 1603 to 1867, and there weren't wars and things, and the ninja mostly disappeared. Simply because if there isn't a decent job, well, you can't get work. But it was kept up. So they were a number of interesting people that became very, very famous. Now, Tokugawa Ieyasu gained his power particularly due to one man who lived from 1542 to 1596, and he was from Eiga, known for his bravery, and skill. But though he was a samurai, he was also a ninja, and that was Hattori Hanzo. And he was the guy that saved Tokugawa. So he's obviously one of the key ninja figures. Then you had Mochizuki Chiyome, who was in fact a lady. And she led a network of female spies known as kunoichi for the Takeda clan. And they didn't do assassinations so much. They did spy work, and they got into everybody's houses and knew everything. So she was famous simply because she knew more than anybody what your secrets were. And of course, if you know how people were dressed as women in Japan, it was often a case where you had heavy makeup. You could hide in plain sight quite well as a woman. So, very cunning. Now, of course, you also had Fuma Kotaro, a legendary ninja leader of the Fuma clan, who was apparently the rival of Hattori Hanzo. And of course, therefore, worked even harder to be better. We also know there was a chap by the name of Kato Danzo, who was in fact a acrobat.
Oh,
And
wow,
he was an
okay.
expert in acrobatics, and he was known as Flying Kato, but he was also a ninja and a spy. So
Got you.
he added in a whole lot more to the skills of the ninja. You also had another Fujibayashi Nagato no Kami, who compiled the Bansens Shukai, which is one of the absolute central manuals on how to be a ninja, and therefore was very important in putting things together. So they were known for their ability to spy and infiltrate. And one of the key things was you didn't just dress as a monk, you were trained to be a monk. If that's what you were trained to be it. So it wasn't just like a quick disguise. You could
Yeah.
completely be a monk or a merchant or a geisha or whatever entirely,
Oh, yeah.
so that there was absolutely no way the disguise could be broken.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they went all out for it. Of course, they were also expert in sabotage and assassination. So they would set fires, poison supplies, do covert attacks, sneak into places to execute people, and use terror tactics. They also were experts in alchemy. They were experts in the terrain, in how animals worked, in psychology, the use of a whole ton of things that would make them even more powerful. And there were specific sets of rules of engagement they would use. So first was the rule of wind, where you found out everything about the strengths and weaknesses of the area and the land. Then you had the techniques of earth, where they knew exactly what you're physically capable of, how many men and protections you have. And finally, you had the techniques of man, where they knew exactly how you worked. Where did you go for a walk in the morning? When did you take tea? Every last tiny bit. And there's a famous story of a utterly impenetrable fortress where there was a samurai that needed to be assassinated, and he had no weakness. He had tons of guards, huge amounts of protection. He was an incredibly skilled warrior. But he used to like to walk in the garden for half an hour in the morning and smell the flowers. So they poisoned the pollen in the flowers and killed him.
That's true.
So when I say they got clever, they got
Yeah.
very clever. And it worked. That's one big thing about the ninja, is it worked. So they were experts in taijutsu, unarmed combat, and in various forms of weapon combat. They were experts in stealth and disguise. There was a whole set of techniques on just how to walk that you had to learn. Walking in leaves, walking on the ground, walking on water. Yes, you could, if you knew how. Walking on walls, and you probably can guess how they managed that. Walking so you made no noise. How to walk on a nightingale floor. You know what a nightingale floor is, don't you?
No.
So what they would do is you would have a wooden floor, but when they nailed it together, around every nail they put a little brass collar, so that when you stepped on that board, it squeaked.
That's true.
So if you walked across the floor, it sang like a nightingale.
It's crazy.
So outside your bedroom, you had a corridor with nightingale floors. So anyone trying to get in at you would make a noise. So
That's
you knew
interesting.
they were coming. Yes, interesting. So yeah, it's a thing. Nightingale floors. And you've probably seen it in anime.
Probably, like, not that I can think of, but yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Now, one of the amazing things that they would do is they would carry a very small blade that was immensely sharp. Now, one of the things ninja are said to be able to do is walk through walls. It's true, they could. But remember, most Japanese houses were one big room separated out with shoji screens, which were made of rice paper. You take a really sharp razor knife and you slice the screen, slip through and wet it behind you. Unless you're really looking for it, you won't find the cut.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So they could literally walk through walls or screens. So if somebody runs in the room to see if anyone's there, and you've gone through the screen, there's no evidence anybody was in the room.
Sure.
And of course,
Crazy.
that would make people even more frightened of the ninja, because they appear and disappear.
That's so
So
crazy.
they encouraged all of the myth, simply because the more scared you were of them, the better. So yeah, very, very clever people. So could they walk on water? Yes, they could. Because if you remember, bamboo is hollow. It floats. And
Yeah.
if you bind together in a special way a whole bunch of bamboo sticks, you can make 2 shoes that will float. You put them on, and by walking in a particular way, you can cross a body of water. If
Yeah,
anybody
actually,
sees you, because they will sink a bit, it will literally look like you're walking on water.
yeah. That's crazy.
Be afraid of the ninja, for they are demons of the night that walk on water.
It's creepy as hell.
Now the koga came up with what we now know as the cat's claws, the shuko and the ashuko, those spikes that look like a sort of a glove thing that you put on your hand with the spikes out the front.
Oh, yeah.
That allowed them to climb trees, to climb walls, even without a rope.
I have something like that at home. It looks like a knuckle duster almost.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
And they were very effective. You can climb what are otherwise unclimbable walls using the so the shuko go on the hands and the ashuko go on the feet. And you just go up a wall. So the ninja could walk on water, climb walls, and strangely enough could fly. There is small evidence at least one clan created a kind of kite which allowed them to launch themselves off a high place and fly over. And they would do so while carrying fireworks. So they would fly over an encampment that they wanted to terrorize, drop the fireworks, and to the people below it seemed as though a dragon had flown over raining fire, which terrified them, which was the point.
It
And
just
the
get
more-
confused me,
yeah.
like, what the heck?
The more terrified your enemy, the better. And because people in those days were very superstitious, you can imagine it went down very badly for them.
Yeah.
So, funnily enough, while they did occasionally do assassinations, mostly they were not assassins. They were far more spies, because information was the most important thing. Now, as things went along, the peasant warriors of the Aiga and the Koga districts eventually formed Iki as a means of defense, because the people in this area weren't the highborn, and they needed to protect themselves from all of the troubles, because it was a very troubled period. So the Iki, which were mostly illegal, became a way of defending themselves. And when the Tokugawa took over the shogunate, they became usable. And that's how you got the ninja. Now, ninja is a mix of two kanji, two words, ninja, which is not what they were actually called. Originally, they were shinobi, which is a shortened form of shinobi no mono. So that would have been what they mostly referred to them as, to steal away or to hide. So to be invisible. Mono just means a person. So an invisible person, which fits exactly to what they were. Ninja was not a common use thing. It's something that came in much later. So shinobi or monomi, which means one who sees, a spy, would have been probably what they are referred to, along with nokizaru, the monkey on the roof, the rapa, or ruffian, kusa, or grass, because they were considered to be expendable, and they would just be too many to stop. And then Iga mono, somebody from Iga. So, yeah, but ninja got caught on. Kunoichi is another one. Originally, it kind of just meant that woman. So, a woman that you didn't realize was an enemy, really. So, there are a lot of stories, and of course, the movies are always better than the reality, I suppose, but nevertheless, the whole point is that they worked in secret. And it was very, very difficult to find much about them because, well, they were secret. That's the point. If you're not secret, you're not doing very well. So the good ones we know even less about. It was only really formalized further on in their career in the Bansen Shukai, the original book of which was the Kanrin Seiyo. And there are 48 points of fighting techniques, how to make a makibishi from bamboo, how to make footwear that makes no sound, fighting techniques when surrounded by many enemies, precautions when using swords at night, how to listen. And then, of course, the important things that scared a hell of a lot of people. You may have seen, for example, especially in the cartoons, the ninja kneeling down and doing things like, you know, your...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that is called kujikiri. And they are mental techniques to focus your mind that were also said to be black magic that would stop guard dogs barking and so on. So they believe...
I've actually caught you doing something interesting once
yes?
before.
Tell
Yeah.
me. Okay, go for it.
You know, when you're having a conversation with somebody, right?
Yeah.
I think it's... Okay, let me see if I can remember. You do something with your hands like this?
Yes.
Yeah. I've caught you doing it before.
Okay, so in the tradition that I learned,
Yeah.
earth, water, fire, air,
Okay.
the gateway to the void.
Cool. Yeah, because
Yes, it's a
I
focus
looked at
technique.
I saw once before, if you're interviewing somebody, if you're talking, you usually pull that kind of thing. You
The,
did once before.
yes, this is the focus on what is.
Yeah.
When you're talking to someone and you want to connect and understand the humanity
Yeah.
of them, you focus. It's
Yeah.
a
No, I
habit.
saw you do it once before. That's why I know you were a reporter, because that's how you did it.
Some habits are hard to break. It seems I've
Yeah.
given myself away.
No, it's only because I saw it once on TikTok. This is a random video, and then I realized you did it, and I'm like, hey, makes sense.
There you are. And added with it is habits from back when I was a monk, where you would obviously when you pray, but
Yeah.
you would often when talking to people, because it's a prayerful
Yeah.
gesture, it puts people at ease. So you get into the habit of doing it.
Yeah. That's really cool.
So, well, or maybe I'm secretly a ninja.
You could be.
You don't know.
Yeah.
So, nevertheless,
That's pretty cool.
when people do things, watch them, because they
Yeah,
do
that's the
give
thing.
themselves away. And I will tell you something. I remember I interviewed somebody the one day, and afterwards, one of the people I interviewed with them said to me, "But that was a useless interview. You never asked them a single thing that we wanted to know about. Why didn't you?" And I said,
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
didn't
need
have
to. The questions I
gave you
asked were to distract them. I was watching what they were doing.
Yeah, for sure. Because people say a lot more than by their body language than actually by, for sure.
And they said, "Well, how do you mean?" I said, "Well, you wanted to know where they hid the stuff they stole." And I
Yeah.
kept looking around, and they kept looking where I was looking, except one place where they wouldn't look where I was looking. And when we went
Yeah,
and
that's
looked where they
crazy.
wouldn't look, there was hidden the bag of stuff they had stolen.
That's crazy, eh? Shit.
I said my talking was just there to distract them.
Yeah,
It had
sometimes you
nothing
have
to do.
to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interviewing is more than you think. So yes, I can be sneaky. I'm a horrible person.
No, you're not horrible. It's interesting. It's really cool.
So yes, these are actually the kind of things that would be important if you were to be a spy, a ninja, to pay
Mm.
attention to all of the things said and all of the things not said, and to compile everything till you know a person completely, the path of earth.
Yeah.
So yes, now of course there's been all kinds of stories who apparently may or may not have used the ninja, who the ninja were. It's internet's being a bit unstable there. That's not good. We shall keep an eye on it. But we are here, and we are here. Bonk. There we go. Just so that the TikTok knows. Oh, Lord, TikTok. So,
Sorry.
yeah, absolutely. Now, we know then that they were very, very good at hiding. And in fact, there's a story of one guy who was Otomono Sahito, the last really known active ninja, who apparently was asked to assassinate two chiefs of the Kumaso people. And they say that what he did was he disguised himself as a charming woman. Now, people will say that's impossible until you remember how the geisha had to dress.
Yeah, no.
You
It's pretty easy to
absolutely could.
disguise,
Yes,
for
and
sure.
he got in because he was a young boy, and he assassinated the both of them. And such tactics were considered not suitable. And if you were caught, as we find quite a few were, they were immediately executed for complete dishonor. So it was not an easy thing to do. Now, the first ninjutsu schools started when Daisuke Tokugura and Kaine Doshi formalized the teachings of Chinese and native Japanese guerrilla tactics into what was a very counterculture thing for the time. As a samurai, Daisuke lost his lands and title after being defeated in a regional conflict, and was ordered for his loss of honor to commit seppuku. He refused and traveled instead to the mountains southwest of Honshu in 1162, where he met Doshi, a Chinese warrior monk. So Daisuke abandoned Bushido and started training with Doshi and put together what eventually became ninjutsu. And his descendants founded the very, very first ninja school, which became known as the oldest school in Japan of ninja, Tokagura-ryu. And it is still in existence today, they say. Is it? Well, they're ninja. How would you know?
Yeah.
So you see then the actual schools developing, which then trained people up, which when the wars between the clans started and between the samurai, made them very, very relevant. So these manuals of espionage initially came from the Chinese military strategy, but then drew on other things like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and of course the famous work by Miyamoto Musashi. Come on, if you're a ninja fan, either of you, Spooky, Mickey, what did Miyamoto Musashi write? You can give it in Japanese, or English? You must know.
I'm not a ninja fan, so
Mickey, I'm broken.
I'm
It was
so
the
sorry. I didn't.
Gorin no Sho, the Book of Five Rings. And it is
Don't know.
literally the absolute seminal work. If you ever study karate or any martial arts, that book you have to have read. It was written by Musashi, who also developed the butterfly technique with the katana, 2 swords.
Oh, sure.
Yes, and he was possibly what you would call a kensai. Now, as you know, the samurai believed that the sword was everything and felt that, in fact, the katana had a soul. And a kensai, literally translated, is a sword saint. So just as in English, a saint in the church, what there is like the pinnacle of religiousness, a kensai is the absolute master of the way of the sword. And he is said to only ever have been defeated once in his life by my favorite hero, who started the use of jodo, the short staff.
Oh,
Yes. So, interesting. Now, the shinobi had several roles: spy, kancho; scout, teisatsu; a surprise attacker, or kishu; an agitator, konran. And they were organized into guilds with their own territories. Your jonin ran everything and did the hiring out. Then you had your chunin, who had their tasks given and would send out the genin, the field agents, to carry out the actual missions. So you never knew who you were hiring. And this, of course, added to the terror, because it meant that you were afraid, even if you were the one hiring the ninja. And this meant you made damn certain to pay. Because you
just now.
don't want them coming back. Yes. So the Aiga and Koga clans were the Jizumurai families living in the province of Iga, which is in the modern-day Mie prefecture, and the adjacent Koga, which initially was written Koka, named after a village in what is now the Shiga prefecture. And from these regions, entire villages became devoted to the training of ninja. The remoteness and inaccessibility in the mountains had a big role in keeping them hidden and safe. And you will find in the Go Kagami Furoku the following written: there was a retainer of the family of Kawai Akinokami of Aiga, of the preeminent skill of shinobi, and consequently for generations the name of the people from Aiga became established. Another tradition, the same, grew up in Koga. So they knew about these things. They absolutely realized these were people to be careful of, to respect greatly, and preferably to keep on retainer so they didn't attack you. And we know that when Yoshihisa attacked Rokaku Takayori in the serious high-level fight between two groups, along there was the family of Kawai Akinokami from Aiga, who served him, and worked as spies, trackers, and more. Nah. Inactivity detected. I think they need very, very much to have a listening thing in to hear. They do it quick enough if you show pictures they don't like. Goodness gracious, but they can't tell you're active.
Yeah, that.
Right? Ah, dear.
But
So,
yeah,
nevertheless, they gained their fame, especially in warfare, night attacks, and ambush, which no samurai could do. And the ability to know exactly who was where and had what troops, and basically ruining their supply trains so that the soldiers would be starving and weakened. That was all the ninja. So it did bring some interesting moral dilemmas for the samurai, but they went ahead. At a point, though, these things went on until about 1581, where Nobunaga invaded the Aiga province and wiped out all of the organized clans of ninja. Now, survivors fled, some to the mountains of Kii, and others arrived not there, but in the province of Ieyasu Tokugawa, and they were well treated. And therefore, because of what Nobunaga did, wiping them out and their mercenary groups, he basically made it so that they became the ninja. So it was possibly a bad idea on his part. And of course, as we know, Nobunaga lost to Tokugawa and the shogunate shifted. So absolutely, we know that following the one big battle in 1560, Okehazama, if it matters, Tokugawa employed a group of 80 Koga ninja led by Tomo Sukesada, and they raided an outpost of the Imagawa clan. The account given of this assault in the Mikawa go Fudoki says that they infiltrated the castle, set fire to its towers, and killed the Castellan along with 200 of the garrison before they could properly react. So they worked. They really did work. They also encouraged a number of things that made people more afraid. Now, in cartoons and in the movies, the shuriken is seen to be an effective way of killing people at a distance. It wasn't, and it was never meant to be. What the shuriken really was for, and what it worked for, was distraction. Now imagine you're on guard duty. You're standing at the end of the bridge connecting the mainland to the little island where the castle is. It's dark. It's just you and your buddy on guard duty. You're already very superstitious, but rumor has been spread, and you can imagine who did the spreading of the rumor, that there are night demons around, and they will cut you with invisible swords because they are ghosts. And you're standing there thinking, surely not. And all of a sudden, in front of your eyes, a cut appears on the face of your buddy. And he's like, oh my God, I've just been cut. And you're like, there's nobody there. How are we going to fight against an enemy we can't see? And while you're standing there going, what the hell is going on? You get cut. And you just don't know how. Terrified, you flee. Because the ghosts are attacking. And of course, the ninja who was throwing shuriken can now walk straight across the bridge into the castle.
So clever.
Also, in the middle of a fight, if two people are attacking you, a shuriken to the face stops one of them while you beat up the other one.
Yeah, for sure.
They were surprise weapons to make people run away. And they worked.
Makes
Now, of
sense.
course, they come in different types. So we remember the stars, and we call them ninja stars. Now, if it is a four-pointed star, it is a Senban shuriken. But that's only one variety. There were kinds with many different points, and there were ones that were just a spike, called a bo shuriken. So they had several varieties that were used in different ways. So, for example, the bo shuriken was also used in hand-to-hand combat and used as a footrest to help you climb a wall, because it was a spike you could jam into between the bricks. So they were yeah. Go on. Speak.
Did you ever watch the movie Jeepers Creepers? That the guy
No, I wanted to and didn't.
Anyway, one of his weapons he makes like that is with the it's like what you say.
A
Same
spike.
thing. Yeah.
Yes.
But he kills in the second movie ends up bursting the tires of a school bus and that's funny.
Well, that is very much a ninja thing, because the thing about a thin spike, you can conceal it almost anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's
But
suddenly in your hand and it's piercing. So it's an effective weapon. And
that's
if you're
good
skilled.
movie.
Yeah. And you can throw them, climb with them, stab tires with them in the modern day. Not in ancient Japan, they didn't have rubber tires. But you can see how it translates very well, because they were adaptable. So absolutely. They happened often. Now, once the Edo period started, all of the use of the ninja pretty much died out, and many of them became just guards, or they would be hired as gardeners with the understanding that the fact they were secretly able to fight meant that anybody trying to break in would suddenly be confronted not with a gardener but with a ninja, but the real ninjery stuff faded away. But there was during their time a great deal that mattered, and the ability to travel secretly meant that all of the skills that they had were all about, you didn't know they were a threat until it was too late. So out of that, you have the straight-bladed ninja sword, which could be concealed inside a walking stick until you took it out and reassembled it as a sword. It was shorter than a katana, and it was very much thicker and heavier, because they would use it as a pry bar to help climbing walls. Even the scabbard was used for stuff. Often the scabbard was longer than the blade because they hid things inside, like blinding powders or crushed pepper. So if you're being chased by dogs, you scatter it behind you. There were lots of tricks. They would hide blades inside fans, because most people carried fans. It was a cultural thing. And farming tools were used as weapons, because if you saw a farmer with farming tools, absolutely. And so things like the kama and the sai, the sickle, and the rice planting implement were absolutely there for the use of doing work, but could be used as a weapon.
For sure.
The Kusurigama and the kusuri, the chains, the weighted chains, were very, very popular, because when packed away, they're tiny. You can
Yeah,
barely
you
see
can't really
them,
see them.
but they're a fairly good ranged weapon as well. So all of these things were used, and it was quite important. We know that under Tokugawa, there was a time in the 1600 when one ninja went right through the Eastern Army defenders during the siege of Hataya and planted the flag of Tokugawa on the front gate of the castle that was under siege, just to let them know we can.
So,
Now, you can imagine what that does for the morale of your defenders. You wake up in the
yeah,
morning and your enemy's flag is right there.
yeah, it can like
We know
viral.
that there was a daimyo in 1608, Todo Takatora, who was assigned by Ieyasu to control the Tsu, a new domain that covered portions of Aiga and Ise province. It was worth a lot of money, and it would grow with a revenue that could really assist the governance, the Takatora governance. And because of its importance and the amount of wealth it would generate, it was vulnerable. So Todo Takatora employed the Aiga Ryu ninjas to basically work around. And if anybody came, he knew, and they would get taken out by the ninja. And because he was clever, he let everybody know that he had hired them, which added to people are going to be like, yeah, we're not going to attack that one, just in case. Because then you're like, is that guy over there just a priest or is he a ninja? What about that guy tilling the field there? Is he a farmer or a ninja? Hey,
yeah, there's some serious trust issues.
you stop off at a tea room and have a cup of tea. Wait, is my waitress a ninja that's going to poison me? Well, you don't know, do you?
It's very good, yeah.
It worked, and it worked well. So farmers, priests, geishas, all of these things. Now, what did they wear? They wore what everybody wore. They wore what their disguise was, for the most part. They only would wear a concealing uniform if they were doing a very specific job, and it probably wouldn't be black. We know that the Koga ninja were recruited against the Christian rebels led by Amakusa Shiro at Hara Castle in Hizen province and wiped them out. And they said that the men from the Koga in Omi province concealed their appearance and would go to the castle every night and go inside as they pleased, and none knew who they were. They, the Koga, were ordered to reconnoiter the plan of construction of Hara Castle and survey the distance from the defensive moat to the second bailey, the Ninomaru, the depth of the moat, the conditions of the roads, the height of the wall, and the shape of the loopholes. Now, this would have been impossible for anyone else. So the ninja just walked in and had a look. And it worked very, very... Oh, she vanished. I wonder where Mickey went. Nevertheless, it worked incredibly well, and it meant that he knew exactly what was going on inside. He absolutely knew... Thank you for the likes. He absolutely knew that they were running out of food, which meant he immediately went and took out all deliveries of food around the area to make sure they couldn't get any more. They got all the secret passwords. They knew exactly who was where and what. And lots of things going on that could never otherwise be known at all. And eventually, just to prove how much they could do, they went and stole their banner. Now, the banners were a matter of honor, hugely important, and having it stolen was terrible, which basically meant that they really struggled. And of course, eventually they ran out of food. The defenders ended up eating moss and grass. Desperation was terrible, and eventually they just walked in and took it over. The Koga Ninja went in with the attackers and captured everything, and there was nothing they could do about it. So ninjas worked really well. They were excellent. And as we know, the kunoichi were able to go pretty much anywhere they wanted. Nobody knew who they were. And for a fee, you could learn everything about your enemy. And that was the point. We know there were a good 1,000-odd ninja that ran around at the height of their time, which is a heck of a lot when you think about it. I mean, I know in modern days we think of a lot more people, but for the time, that was a lot. They were, however, very much considered to be dishonorable, but also sorcerous, magical, and demonic. Now, in kabuki theater, the stagehands wear black clothing, and they just walk up and down and change things and do things, and you are to ignore them. They are not part of the play. So the ninja were depicted as wearing the same clothing as the stagehands to show that they were invisible, which helped make the story of the ninja suits. We know as well that they were very, very good at camouflage. They knew how to use the environment to disappear, to walk silently, to move through trees and through the upper parts of bamboo without being seen. They were really, really good at tracking, hunting, and there were techniques even where one would use a box of crickets to distract guards. So they had a lot of cunning things. They used caltrops to stop people following them. They used shuriken to allow them to terrify and distract. They absolutely did use general tools as weapons, and they worked. And of course, the famous taijutsu, which meant that they could fight armed or unarmed. And what they were most known for was the fact that their fighting was hard, fast, and as deadly as possible. There was no warning, there was no honor, and they killed as fast as possible when they worked. So it was all about shock tactics. Now, we do know that they had a number of interesting things. So they had ways to make special under-sandal shoes so that layering with cotton, it stopped any noise when sneaking around. How to attack when surrounded by a large number of enemies, throwing charred owl and turtle powder into the air, which blinded opponents, and possibly even casting spells and things, though whether they did or whether they just said they did to scare people is another thing. We know that there were things that were written in some of the books that were spell-like. We know that they used the traditional ninja swords hidden in canes, and of course the makibishi, the caltrops, quite a lot, because it worked. But their main role wasn't assassination. It was spying, which no samurai could do, and they were very, very good at it. They observed hidden things and were seen but never noticed, taken as being friends, moving freely in public without anybody realizing. It was entirely a spy network with added bonuses that, when needed, they could kill. Now, of course, people took all kinds of countermeasures to stop the ninja. They would hide weapons in places weapons wouldn't ordinarily be. They would use nightingale floors. They would use traps and tripwires attached to alarm bells. They designed their castles to be very difficult to navigate, with winding routes that led inside, blind spots and holes in the walls so that you could see who was below. And if you go to places like Himeji Castle or Nijo Castle in Kyoto, they absolutely do use nightingale floors. Grounds were covered with gravel, which would crunch and then warn people somebody's coming. And of course, carefully segregated buildings meant fires could be better contained. But who really were ninja? Well, given that they were secret people, some are known. Kumawaka from the 16th century, Hattori Hanzo, serving the Tokugawa shogunate, Ieyasu Tokugawa, absolutely. His descendants have even published ninja manuals as well. Fumo Katoro, as we said, who killed Hattori Hanzo eventually, and sad to say, there is a weapon named after him that isn't real. So the Fuma Shuriken came from fiction, which is kind of sad because I like the idea of that. We know that Fujibayashi Ngato no Kamai wrote the Bansen Shukai, so he was one. Kato Danzo, as we know, Flying Kato, an amazing fellow, and more. So there's a lot of things that came up. They are known for their specialized stuff that was meant to terrify. So one which is less known are the tekokagi. They are literally hand claws. And if you know Indian martial arts, you will know that they were the ones who invented these way back when, but they absolutely were used by the ninja. A kind of tiger's claw meant to simulate the attack by a great beast, which would terrify people even further. Your shuko and aishuko for climbing. Obviously the kagenawa, the climbing hook, the makibishi or caltrops, the shiku maizu, the cane swords, the bow shuriken, which we spoke of, some of which even had linen flights on to make them travel better. You had a chigiriki, which was basically a chain with a weight on and on the end of a cane. You had your gama, just a weighted chain, and the tsurigama, a chain and sickle. The weighted chain was also known as the kusarifundo. They also even would wear a very thin woven chainmail shirt under their clothing, and this helped terrify further because when you cut a ninja, they don't bleed, which makes them even more terrifying. The fear is what made things matter, really and truly. So the ninja changed the course of history. They became massively, if briefly, important. We know that had Ieyasu Tokugawa been killed, Japanese history would have gone very, very different. Instead, he won, and he became a shogun. And Ieyasu's Tokugawa shogunate, the last in the shogun era, is credited with bringing in 2 whole centuries of peace and prosperity that would never otherwise have happened. So, very, very interesting. There are even stories where certain ninja kind of went Robin Hood. There was the Aiga-born Ishikawa Gomon, who used his skills to steal gold and give it to the needy, which was kind of cool, a sort of outlaw hero. But apparently he attempted to assassinate Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a powerful warlord, and he was caught trying, and they boiled him alive. So, yeah, didn't manage to go very far. Now, of course, it's definitely worked in popular culture and TV, and of course, we have the Ninja Turtles in thanks to what happened. We know that the real ninja were possibly all of what people thought and maybe none of it as well, which is kind of interesting. They certainly were very, very clever. They used the most amazing different things to achieve their aims. They did like to use the split-toed tabi, but so did everybody. It was a samurai shoe, not a ninja shoe, and it was very good for grip in battle and very comfortable for wearing inside, because you don't wear shoes inside a house. So the tabi, they're tabi socks more than anything, tabi slippers, would have been used, yes, absolutely. But they didn't really look the same way as popular culture. They did use fancy things, swords, absolutely, shuriken, absolutely, the small hand sickles, definitely and effectively, because they could. And there were ways of concealing all of these things and more. I think it's probably true that it was the people more than the things that made them what they were. I mean, Hattori Hanzo was probably the most famous ninja, a master strategist and samurai, and he literally made Japan possible. Without him, no Tokugawa. Without Tokugawa, no Edo period. And without the Edo period, Japan wouldn't have been unified, which would have been terrible. Fuma Kotaro, from the Fuma clan in the Kanagawa prefecture, specialized in horseback guerrilla warfare and naval espionage. Not what we normally think the ninja did, but yes, they did. We know that the clan was a minor clan. They served Taira no Masakado and became important because they were effective. And eventually they developed their own school, which had its own secrets. And the school ended up in the service of the Hojo clan of Odawara. Now, Fuma Kotoro was the fifth of the Fuma clan leaders. He was born in the Sagami province, interestingly enough, modern-day Kanagama prefecture, and he became the leader of a band of 200 brigands, battle disruptors, mercenaries, that were made up of brigands, pirates, burglars, and thieves. And he basically was hired to do the things that samurai couldn't and weaken opposing armies. And he did. In 1580, he infiltrated and attacked the camp of the Takada clan at night, causing severe chaos, resulting in massive casualties among the disorient enemies as they attacked each other. Very effective techniques. In 1590, at the siege of Odawara, when Hideyoshi laid siege to Odawara Castle, the Hojo clan was forced to surrender because of ninja use. So we know that. They became reduced to brigands in the Edo period when ninja were no longer needed. But they say at this time, Kotaro was responsible for the death of Hattori Hanzo, the famous ninja that worked for the Tokugawa, who had tracked him down to try and kill him and failed. Kotaro lured him into a small channel where the tide trapped the Tokugawa gunboats, and then they set fire to the channel with oil and sorted them out. But he was eventually caught, because, again, his opponents hired another ninja called Saka Jinai, and he was executed through beheading by order of Ieyasu Tokugawa. So, interesting, because in legend, a legend he inevitably would have encouraged, he was part demon, monstrous, 2 meters tall with inverted eyes, and terrifying in every way, hugely demonic, flamboyant. And in contrast, what is interesting, Hattori Hanzo, his supposed arch rival, was usually spoken of as being very subdued, which is interesting. We also know that Fuma literally does mean wind demon. And you can actually play him, if you like video games, in Onimusha 2, Samurai Destiny. We know that he turns up in TV series, not himself, but as a character. And he is said to have invented the collapsible four-bladed shuriken, which is not true, which is kind of sad, because we like the idea of it. But he was famous. Fujibayashi Nangato no Kami was a very interesting one, a samurai and ninja who probably had a real name, not that one. We know that he came from Yufune village in Ahigun in Aiga province. So he was an Aiga ninja. We don't know what his real name was at all. He developed friendship with Yamamoto Kansuke prior to Kansuke's service under Takeda Shingen. Now, Yamamoto Kansuke was a samurai, one of the 24 generals, and a brilliant strategist. So he learnt a lot from this guy, obviously. He had close ties to certain other clans of ninja, and samurai as well, because his sister was in relationship with one of them. So we know that when Yoshikata had difficulty capturing the Sawayama castle from the rebelling Dodo clan, it was Fujibayashi who helped him, and the ninja took out the castle for him. So absolutely an important and interesting thing that lasted right up until Nobunaga wiped out the Aiga region. And he was one of the families, his was one of the families that fled to Ieyasu Tokugawa. So absolutely, yeah, had a hand in the changing of Japan. They were not bad people, though. We often look on the ninja as being these sort of evil spirits. No, they weren't. They were just not samurai, and they were mercenaries, and they absolutely did try to do good things as well, from the varying point of views. Without the ninja, we wouldn't have Japan as it is, which is pretty cool. We know that the ninja did do some impressive stuff. So Kato Danzo, for example, flying Kato. And if you ever watched The Green Hornet, that terribly made but rather cool series where Bruce Lee acted as Kato, you will realize that the sidekick to the Green Hornet was named after Flying Kato. And of course in Japan it wasn't known as the Green Hornet, it was called the Kato Show. And they would have known the history. So it was remembered, and Bruce Lee got to play Kato, which is pretty cool. They say that he was a master sorcerer. He swallowed a bull in front of a crowd of 20 people and had the ability to fly. They suspect that he was an expert in illusion, hypnosis, and possibly the use of dodgy drugs on other people, which gave him abilities that terrified. He was then tested, according to certain people, to see if he was any good. And Danzo was then challenged to sneak into a castle and retrieve a prized Naginata from one of the people in the castle, Naoi Kanetsugu. Danzo got in, despite the fact the castle was heavily guarded, and not only succeeded in stealing the Naginata, but captured a young servant girl, Kenshin, that then realized, and then of course they realized that Danzo would be a good ally, a good one to have on your side, because he literally bought a living person out without being caught. We know then, however, that Kanetsugu plotted to kill Danzo. And in an effort to avoid getting killed, he defected to Takeda Shingen, the rival of his boss, who suspected Danzo to be a double agent. But nevertheless, Shingen then ordered Danzo killed. Unfortunately, with both his boss and his new boss against him, he was executed, which is kind of sad because he had really done some amazing things and proved himself to be particularly skilled. But I suppose not everybody can manage to do that. Now, Mochizuki Chiyome is a very interesting one because she was a woman and all of her ninja were women. Some say she might not have existed, or she was an alias to somebody else, we're not really sure. But according to the stories, she found and described the details of the fourth battle of Kawanakajima and noted that Moritoki Mochizuki was the husband of Chiyomi and died in this battle. She supposedly got a written permission from Shingen that allowed them to make Miko village. Now, the Miko was then the village of spies, and the Miko was the head of the spies. And if you ever read any of Eric von Lustbader's books, you know that one of his books is called The Miko, and it comes from this. And Chiyome became a ninja because she needed to. Now, we don't know too much. It is said, we know that the village of Miko was there, but then here's the problem. There's no evidence that they were spies, but then if they were any good as spies, would there be evidence that they were spies? You kind of got to wonder, do you not? According to stories, though, she had a wide-ranging and excellent collection of kunochi and pretty much knew everything. And through that, so did Shingen. The last one we're going to talk about was the head of the Banki Shinobinoden, Junichi Kawakami, the last Soke and the only heir to authentic ninjutsu. He said he is the 21st head of the Kogaban family, which includes Aiga and Koga ninjutsu. And he is now the honorary director of the Aiga Ryu Ninja Museum. In 2011, he was specially appointed professor at Mie University to research ninjutsu for them. Now, Kawakami is not a ninja bloodline on his own. He learned his art as a boy from a man named Masado Ishida, a medicine peddler claiming to be one of the last remaining ninjutsu practitioners alive. According to the newspaper, Kawakami has something most ninja claimants do not, an earnest combination of both scholarship and humility, not to mention some very highly polished skills as well. So if anybody has a ninja background, it's going to be him. He is the only one that got to be a teacher like this, and his top student, Yasushi Kiyomoto, is the only one teaching what he has learned from the Banke Shinobinoden group. Kiyomoto operates a dojo in the Kanagawa prefecture, but doesn't take on new students anymore. In 2012, Kawakami decided he would not appoint anyone to take over the next ninja grandmaster. He said, in the age of civil wars or during the Edo period, ninjas' abilities to spy, kill, or mix medicine may have been useful, but now we have guns, internet, and better medicines, and the art of ninjutsu has no place in the modern age. And that was the last ninja. Dunno, what do you think? Does ninjutsu have a place in the modern age? Who knows? But nevertheless, it was very, very interesting. And of course, the ninja did a great many things, and they were indeed very, very exciting. But what do you think? Do you think that they have a place? Would you like to learn all their skills? There's a lot to learn. It's pretty cool. We do know that the ninja did use firearms, early muskets of course, but they did at a time. Whether or not they're needed in the modern day, I would disagree. I think that the ability to defend yourself in multiple ways will always be useful. And I think that their skills for special forces will always be useful. It would definitely need to be updated and add in skills that perhaps they didn't use in the past, but which would be much more of use today. I would certainly say that. Culturally, of course, I think it's the kind of thing that, sure, it's a wonderful thing to remember culture and maybe undemonize their history, because they were often seen as something bad where they really weren't mostly assassins, and when they were, it was in a time when these things really were required and were dangerous, which is a very different situation. So I think that they would have a place in the modern day, and if nothing else, well, I mean, lots and lots of people learn karate for a reason. It is cool, it is important, and it is useful, and it teaches you more than just combat. So sure, I think maybe a place. The ability to spy? Well, you know my opinion that warfare in the modern age will never be the way it was in the past. It can't be, for all the reasons. All-out war isn't really possible. And the kind of war that we are inevitably forced into will be a Cold War. And a Cold War relies entirely on intelligence, spying, and the ability to conceal and learn. So I suspect, yes, I think that that would be even more important. Remembering that the ninja in real life were far less the people dressed in a black set of pajamas and bouncing around in the dark, and they were often in plain sight. You just didn't notice them. Those kind of skills absolutely in the modern day are important, necessary, and part of modern warfare and defense. It's how you are able to work against terrorism and more. So yeah, I think absolutely, in my opinion, it very, very much is the case that they are useful, they are important, and they do things that we very much need. And I think it will always be that way, at least in my opinion. So they were great in their day, and I think they would be great in any day. But will we ever know about it? Probably not, because if you think about it, the whole point of an invisible warrior is that they are, after all, invisible. I wonder what happened to dear Mickey. I think she probably got bored with ninjas. We shall have to come up with a new and interesting topic for the next. And I think perhaps we shall go back to something suitably spooky and the truly terrifying, and whether or not that which goes bump in the night bumps hard enough. We shall see. But until then, that is all that I have for you for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll return at 10 o'clock at the next one, which will be on Monday. So until then, thank you for being here with me. I hope you had fun. I hope you come back. And until we have another go at looking at the weird, the wonderful, the strange and more, have a fantastic evening, and thank you for being a part of the life. Sleep deep, sleep sweet, and hopefully you will not be visited by the ninja. Good night.